This is the new COROS Vertix 2S, and this is the new COROS Vertix 2S, and this is also the new COROS Vertix 2S, all of which are the latest iteration of COROS' flagship adventure and multi-sport watch lineup. I've been putting it through its paces over the last little while across a whole boatload of workouts and activities, more than I can possibly shake a stick at, or for that matter, all three of these watches at. As always, my reviews aren't sponsored by anyone. I'm just going to simply tell it like it is, both the good and the bad of the COROS Vertix 2S. So with that, let's just dive straight into it on what you need to know. So the very first thing is the actual name itself. You'll notice it's the 2S. It's not the COROS Vertix 3 or something else. That's going to imply that it's not a huge jump in features or hardware or anything like that. When asked what the S stands for in the COROS Vertix 2S, COROS actually said it doesn't stand for anything. It just simply, it's just an S. They did joke though that you could say the S stands for superior, which to be fair does make sense because it is the most superior version of any other watches to date. Anyways, next up, the price. The price remains the same at $699 US, or all the other currencies on the screen right there. That remains the same as the past. They did note that the existing Vertix 2, not the S version, the existing version, will probably be discounted through various retails over the next little while, but will eventually be phased out. Ultimately though, the Vertix 2 and the 2S have the same firmware. We saw that with COROS' beta firmware they just announced 2 days ago, so it's the same features across both watches. It's only slight differences in hardware, which I'll get into, that will differentiate them. We will need to talk about pricing later on though, because I've got some thoughts there as well. Now, the first technical difference or improvement between the COROS Vertix 2S and the COROS Vertix 2 is the new optical heart rate sensor. This is the same new optical heart rate sensor found on some of COROS' other newer watches, like the Pace 3 and the Apex 2 Pro and Apex 2 series. So it's not brand new to COROS, but it's new to the Vertix 2 series, which is notable because you didn't really want to have your top dog watch with a lesser optical heart rate sensor in it. COROS says that the main reason they have the new optical heart rate sensor is improvements in accuracy, and I'll dive into that later on in this video in the accuracy section for heart rate. In particular, they noted that interval workouts should be better on, and so obviously I put that to the test a lot. I suffered a lot for you. So definitely check out that part of the review in just a minute. Now, that said, with that new optical heart rate sensor, there is a little bit of a downside there, a couple of downsides, in fact. Number one is the battery life. The battery life has actually decreased from the Vertix 2 to the 2S. COROS blames that entirely on the optical heart rate sensor. In fact, there's notably two different decreases that have happened here. First off, for the existing COROS Vertix 2 units, they've downgraded the battery life claims on those down to 128 hours from the initial launch claim of 140 hours. Then for the Vertix 2S, they've downgraded that to 118 hours. So basically a reduction of 10 hours off of the updated claims. Either way, that's still incredible battery life, to be clear. And those are GPS battery life times. When you're talking like just standby watch times, it's many weeks. There's exact specs on different modes on the bottom right there. So we're still talking pretty high in the battery charts. Now, as to why their new optical heart rate sensor would have crappier battery life? Well, the answer is simply that COROS has been turning on more and more features with that optical heart rate sensor, including better accuracy. With their previous sensor, they drew less power, which gave them crappier optical heart rate accuracy. With their newer sensor, they draw more power and get better accuracy. It's frankly as simple as that. In addition, as I mentioned, there's also other features they've added over the past year or so, things like HRV status, that have drained that battery a little bit more as well. The other minor downside that they're also blaming on that optical heart rate sensor is that the watch is a tiny bit thicker, 0.3 millimeters thicker, because that optical heart rate sensor is a little bit thicker as well. Now, the good news though is that despite the new optical heart rate sensor, they have reduced the weight of this thing. So it's reduced by a total of 2 grams, no matter which strap you're using. So it goes from 89 grams to 87 grams with the silicone strap, and 72 grams to 70 grams with the nylon strap. And hey, just a quick note before we go on to the next thing. If you are finding this video interesting or useful, if you could whack that like button at the bottom there, it really does help with this video and the channel quite a bit. Now, we will get away from blaming the optical heart rate sensor for things right now and switch over to another new feature, which is the improved GPS antenna. Now, we need to do like a 30-second history lesson here. When COROS first announced the original Vertix 2 watch, they were the first company to have multi-band or dual-frequency GPS in a endurance-focused watch. Now, unfortunately, when the Vertix 2 came out, its multi-band performance was not awesome. It was meh at best, and as other companies came into the market with multi-band configurations, configurations, they demonstrated that COROS wasn't any better than even their non-multi-band configuration. Now the real kicker here though is that those other companies were using the exact same GPS chipset as COROS was. They just got much better results from it. And the reason is that for most watches today that are using the same chipset, the differences that you see tends to come down to antenna design. And antenna design is an incredibly nuanced thing where just a fraction of a millimeter of that antenna, which goes around the bezel, and how it interacts with the bezel can make the difference between a great watch and a sucky watch. And unfortunately, back in the Vertix 2 days, COROS was still in that learning phase, and thus their antenna design was not super awesome. We saw them improve it a little bit with the Apex 2 and Apex 2 Pro, but it still wasn't really all that great compared to their competitors. However, in the Pace 3, they really stuck the landing on that, and they took those learnings into the Vertix 2S, and you can see those improvements in the GPS accuracy section a little bit later on in this video, which I would encourage you to watch because there is a couple of solid asterisks there to that accuracy that I'm going to dive into, quite literally. Now, the next new thing to note is there's actually 3 versions of it. I feel like that's like a Power Ranger song of Earth, Moon, Fire, Sun, Wind, something, but they are officially Solar, Moon, and Earth. You can see here the Moon and Earth variants, and there's also the Solar variant, which is on my wrist right now. I changed the watch face on this already away from the Solar watch face because honestly, it was horrendous. These 2 watch faces are stunningly beautiful. The Solar watch face just looks like the display is broken or something like that. And COROS confirmed that it was not broken. They just maybe might tweak that particular watch face in the future. But for now, these 2 watch faces are really, really nice. And they're actually animated, by the way. So if you tap this for a second, you're going to see it do a little animation thing. I mean, we're not talking like an incredible level of resolution or frames per second here. This is like half a frame per second, maybe at best. But, hey, I appreciate the look. And again, these 2 watch faces do look great. Even if they don't look great on camera, they absolutely look great in person. All 3 of these watches are the exact same size, they're the same price at $699, and they have their own particular boxes. Also in that box that I'm going to talk about in just a second, all of them include both a silicone strap and a nylon strap. There we go. So silicone strap is right there. The nylon strap is right here. COROS has sort of made a name for themselves with their nylon straps. They're really nice, really lightweight. And you can switch back and forth really easily just by using the back here. You just simply pop that out, pull this down. Come on, come out. It never comes out really easy on camera. I try to make it look easy for you, but I also just noticed right now that this one here is flipped over, which isn't ideal. It should be this way, by the way. I'll just give me a second here, folks. I've been wearing this one, I haven't been wearing these ones because I don't need to wear 3 of the same watch at once. But I do like to look at these ones because they look really pretty. And I would say if you're going to buy one, my preference visually is probably the blue one or the white one. I just happened to unbox this one first, and so it's the one I've been putting on my wrist for the last while. But I would switch over to these when I go out and buy my own because I think these ones just look a lot nicer. But again, just my preference. Anyways, that box is notable. It's notable for 3 reasons. The new case, though, addresses some of the concerns people had around the previous cases. One, people said it was kind of a waste, both from a packaging standpoint and from a shipping standpoint and all the things. So the new case that you can see right here in the box, but also right here, is made out of 100% recycled materials, which is kind of cool. And 2, you can still use it as a case. It has this little piece of Velcro right there. It sticks, it closes. You can easily fill it with M&Ms if you need to. But you can also just tear this apart and put it in your recycle. You don't have to tear it, you just squish it, right? It's just cardboard, that's all it is. Anyways, kudos to COROS for listening to people on the cases. So let's just take a second to walk through the user interface on this, just so you get a quick feel of things, and then we're gonna go ahead and look at heart rate accuracy and GPS accuracy. Take this one off because this is the one I've been using. It has all the good data on it. There we go. And this is the COROS Vertix 2S. Now, it's worthwhile noting that there are 3 buttons right here. 1, 2, 3. This middle one is also digital crown, and the screen is also a touchscreen if you want it that way. I don't tend to use a touchscreen except for the map side of it, but do as you see fit. Now, scrolling on down from there, you can see my stats for the day here. It's 11:45 in the morning, so still pretty early. Right here, this is my running fitness level. Going on down again, you see my training load. This is one area I will complain about. COROS resets the training load every Monday morning at midnight, or 12:01 a.m., however you want to define that, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever from a training load standpoint because all of my runs and bikes and swims I did on Sunday just evaporate. And the whole point of training load is to know your load. That's something I complained about in the Pace 3, and I'm hoping they'll fix it at some point here because it sort of makes it look like they don't know what they're doing from a sports science standpoint. And I think they do in some areas, but this is like a really big tell that needs some work. Anyways, you can see some of that load here in base fitness and load impact. This is just sort of showing you where you are in the grand scheme of things relative to your historical load. Down from there, you've got your recovery time. So I'm 54% recovered. I've got 100 hours until full recovery. COROS did note on their media call that they're working on making this suck less. Yesterday, I hit 120 hours for recovery time after a trail run and a swim, which is just way excessive. So hopefully they'll continue to work on that as well. Here you've got your heart rate over the course of the day. So you can see if I scroll back here before I took it off, there's my heart rate. And we go down to when I was asleep. There we go. Going down again, you've got my sleep time from last night, 6 hours, 15 minutes. I can tap into that, see my sleep stages and phases. I don't tend to judge sleep phases and stages from any wearable. They all kind of suck. But the sleep times are correct, so good job on that. Then you've got your elevation, you've got your sunrise, sunset times, barometric pressure, any smartphone notifications, and then my HRV status showing right there. Right last night was 84 milliseconds, and my normal range is 39 to 57 milliseconds. Now, tapping back from that right here, back to the watch face, to open up a sport mode, you would simply tap this button right there, and then you can see all of your sport modes listed right here. It'll go ahead and default to the last sport mode that you did, but if I wanted to go up to run real quick, just to show you this, go up to run, there we go. I'll tap into that. And then down below that, I can set a basic interval. On the left-hand side here, it's finding my GPS signal, which it won't find indoors, obviously, as well as my optical heart rate, or my heart rate using the optical sensor on the back right there. That's a charging port, by the way, same COROS charging port as in the past. And again, these straps simply pop off by pressing these little buttons right there, and then pushing down like I did earlier, but you can see the optical heart rate sensor just pop up right there. Anyways, flipping it back over to this side here, there is the new pacer option. This is something that was added in firmware just 2 days ago to a bunch of different COROS watches. So this allows you to go ahead and set a given distance. So let's say I want to do a 10K, and what's my target time going to be? Let's just do a nice 39-minute 10K, there we go. And then while I'm running, it'll go ahead and show me where I am relative to that pacer. So this is very similar to Garmin's virtual pacer concept, different than Pace Pro though. That's a different sort of thing where you load in a course and have elevation variations from your pace and all that kind of stuff. So this is a more simplified version of virtual pacer. You see it in a lot of watches out there. Apple has it as well. So it's good to see it here on COROS. Now, backing up real quick, we're not going to go into that quite yet. Going down, this is navigation. This is where if you had a course to load, here's my trail run from yesterday. Yeah, yesterday that I did. And I load this in here. I pull this route down from Strava. So if I were to tap this open, I can see the elevation details of this course. So about 564 meters of elevation gain in the same descent. I can go back here and choose which direction to do the course in, forward or backwards, so positive or reverse. I can turn on and off course warnings. I can turn on and off turn-by-turn instructions. And I can delete the course, which I don't really want to do right now. Otherwise, I just simply tap Start Course and off I would go. As I'm on the course, I'll be able to see where I am on the map. The COROS Vertix 2S, it does have downloadable maps. You can use your smartphone to download those maps to here, totally free for anywhere in the world. Those maps have basically topography details on them, but will not have any sort of road labels or stuff like that. They'll show roads and trails, of course, and oceans and bodies of water, but they won't have any labels of points of interest on those maps. That's a core difference between what COROS, Suunto, and Polar do versus what Garmin does that have those maps with far more detail on it. Practically speaking, it didn't really matter on my run though. When I was out there, I was just following this little line that you can see right there. It's super useful to have those maps when you come to a trail junction. Like you can see this photo right now where I had 5 different trails that intersected at once. To be able to see which trail I'm supposed to be on is again incredibly helpful when I get to that junction. Versus if you had just standard breadcrumb style where it's just a blank sheet and you don't know like where that line is supposed to be relative to those trails, having those maps is really useful. Of course, you'll also see all of your data pages and metrics. Here's a couple photos I took while I was descending down a canyon, so I was going very slow there because I didn't really want to fall down the canyon. That would seem like a bad idea. Especially with all the cactuses and stuff, it just wasn't a good place to fall at that point in time. So I was going very slow, and that's why these metrics look pretty slow right there. In any case, once you finish up your workout, you'll see a summary on that summary page on the watch itself, and then that is then sent over to the COROS app, and you can see all the data metrics there too. Further, if you have accounts like Strava or Training Peaks, etc., all that data will end up on those platforms as well, pretty much instantly. All that works just like it did before and works perfectly fine. Okay, so with all that covered, let's talk about accuracy, because ultimately, the two hardware features that have been changed in this watch, the only two hardware features, in fact, are designed at improving accuracy. So is it more accurate? So, as I said, I've been doing a boatload of tests over the last little while, putting it through its paces, and I'm going to show you 5 different workouts for both GPS and heart rate, and I'm going to go through them reasonably efficiently, but I do have my full in-depth written review linked below where you can actually look at the full data set yourself if you'd like to. So let's start off on the heart rate side, then we'll jump to the GPS side. The very first run I did was an interval run here. Obviously, they said it improved intervals, so I wanted to see if that happened or not. And so for this one, I did the first half of the run at like steady state, but there were some big mountain hill things in the way, so I had to go over those, and that obviously increased my heart rate. On the back returning though, every kilometer, I did these hard interval sprints for a little bit to see how it handled. It only struggled briefly on one interval, just again, very, very briefly, but overall, this is the very first good job on things. The next workout I did was another interval workout here in Amsterdam in the cold. And this one was not so hot. Well, I mean, literally it was not so hot compared to the first one, but it was not hot from an accuracy standpoint. You can see the Vertix 2S struggled quite a bit throughout this workout, as did the Polar Grid X2 Pro that you also see there being pretty messy, versus COROS's armband strap actually had no problems at all in this workout. It nailed it without a problem. This was not a hard workout, to be clear, like hard from a sensor reliability standpoint. It should have aced this workout. It was really straightforward. Anyways, back into the heat I went for this trail run from yesterday morning. And you can see here, this was a good job. I have no real concerns here. There's only one brief moment where only the Vertix 2S, not the Polar Watch, had a struggle for something. I'm not really sure why, but that was just, again, just a very small brief moment in the grand scheme of this trail run going up and down and all sorts of stuff. But otherwise, it was spot on for accuracy. So next, we go over to a ride. And you can see here, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. It was just like, it messed up sometimes, and other times I got it fine. But either way, just something to keep in mind there. Ultimately, from an optical heart rate sensor standpoint, it's very similar to what I saw with the COROS Pace 3. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. And then everything else is just sort of in between somewhere. And it's hard to know when it's going to be good and when it's going to be bad. It's sort of like the Polar Grid X2 Pro as well. I wish I had a better answer there, but that's just sort of the reality of this watch. Now, let's go for some slightly better news, which is the GPS accuracy improvements. Again, the change here is on the antenna design on the outside. Same GPS chipset on the inside, just a new antenna design to hopefully improve accuracy. So starting off with this city run here, this is basically the first portion included a bunch of underpasses and stuff like that, like huge underpasses, like 10, 15 lanes worth of underpasses and trains and all that kind of stuff. No problems there. No problems through some of the low-rise buildings around Amsterdam. No issues there. Then I got to the trickier part, which is the downtown high-rise section. And this is part of the testing that I do for every single GPS watch to see how it can handle this section right here with these very, very tall buildings on a very, very small street. And I go back and forth up and down the streets so that each side of my wrists get equal coverage on this test. Overall, very strong job here from the COROS Vertix 2S. It easily outperformed the Polar, but you're definitely seeing some improvements here in COROS's antenna design, and that's translating to better GPS accuracy. Next up, we've got my trail run from yesterday. Simply put, these were all spot on. Like, these were very, very good job across the board from all 4 of these watches. Next, we've got my climb. This is, again, that 3-hour ride I did here. Overall, all these watches did very, very good on the ascent. The COROS Vertix 2S was right in the mix there with the bike computers as well in terms of the accuracy there. On the descent, if I was to nitpick, I would say COROS was the least accurate on the descent on some of the switchbacks and stuff like that. We're not talking a major difference in accuracy. We're talking just huge nitpicking here. But again, it is nitpicking at some point when you start to look at the difference between these different units. Now, That is unfortunately where the good news ends on the Vertix 2S GPS accuracy, and then we get into open water swimming. As you can see on this picture right here for this open water swim, it didn't go well. So one of the challenges that COROS has had for years alongside of Suunto is if you were to stop and tread water, which is a totally normal part of any open water swim, especially if you do as part of a group where you may be waiting for someone to catch up or whatever the case is, or waiting for a boat to pass, or you name it, there's a gazillion reasons why you're going to stop to tread water for a couple of seconds in open water swim. And when I did that, this thing totally lost the plot and plotted a point way, way far away. Unfortunately, this is something I saw on the COROS Vertix 2 as well. It did it repeatedly, and COROS said they were trying to improve that. And I brought this to them again and said they're going to continue to make more improvements there. But keep in mind, that was years ago, and it still hasn't really been fixed. Now, I went out again to test this against the Suunto race, and in this case, the COROS Vertix 2S did perform better than before, including in the tread water test. It definitely did better than the Suunto race, but you can see it's still off like on the pier at times and in not great places. Of course, if you don't open water swim, then none of this really matters and you're going to find the accuracy perfectly good across the board. Okay, so where do we stand overall on this watch? Well, this is unquestionably COROS's best smartwatch to date, but again, that's sort of like the assumption when you release a new flagship watch. Anything less than that is a failure. The important thing though is I didn't see any of the teething bugs on the Vertix 2S like I saw and I'm currently seeing on the Polar Grid X2 Pro. Now, if we look at those two core new hardware features, the only two hardware features here, the optical heart rate sensor accuracy compared to the Vertix 2 is definitely improved because, again, that was a very low bar given how bad it was. There's still room for improvement. COROS is still nowhere near industry leading when it comes to optical heart rate sensor accuracy. There are many other watch brands and models that are well above it in that area. When it comes to GPS accuracy, though, they've made some nice improvements there. It's gone from being kind of meh at best across the board to being in that upper tier there, at least on land activities. Now, setting aside open water swimming, we do need to talk about the other challenge, which is the price. Priced at $699, it's got the same issues that COROS had when they released the Vertix 2, which is it's just simply well above many of their competitors. Even more so now that Garmin has dropped the price of the Fenix 7, including the Fenix 7 Solar Sapphire series, below these price points. Over the last month or so, we've seen the Garmin Fenix 7 base units at $549 to $599 for the Solar Sapphire edition, so the same sapphire glass. As of right this second, it's at $649, which is still, again, $50 cheaper than this watch. And by COROS's own admission, those watches have far more features than COROS does. Now, COROS argues that their watches and their platform is easier to use. I don't really hear that feedback from people, to be honest, at least people using current generation watches in the current app. I think everyone has their preferences for apps and stuff like that, so that's really a personal preference thing. But if I look across the board, I just don't hear that feedback that much, to be honest. So to each their own. Still, if you are owner of an existing COROS Vertix 1, this could be a really interesting upgrade for you. I don't think a Vertix 2 owner, it makes much sense to upgrade to this. Yet at the same time, if you're an owner of an older Apex series, or really any Apex series, or the COROS Pace series, this is a solid upgrade, especially for the map side coming from the Pace side of things, or the accuracy coming from the Apex side of things. And that includes the Apex 2 Pro series. Anyways, hopefully you found this video interesting or useful. As always, give it a like at the bottom or hit subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. With that, have a good one.